Bevan James Eyles, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you for having me.
I'm really excited to have you on, actually. Anyone that's enjoying this show should know that Bevan was the first person I reached out to when I decided that I wanted to do a podcast, because I know that you've been doing one for how long now? 2, actually.
I started my first one in 2006. So a long time ago. When I started, half your job was explaining what a podcast was.
Yeah.
So,
Which one was that?
How to get a podcast. Well, I started with my triathlon one, and that was in 2006. And then I started my own show in 2010.
Oh, wow. So you're like old school.
Yeah, really.
I'm jumping on the bandwagon really late.
In many ways, not just in podcasting.
So for anybody listening to this, Bev and I come from the same city in New Zealand. And I actually did the math on this right before we caught up. And I realized that I went to my first body attack class with you in the summer of 2000, which means that we've officially known each other for 20 years.
No, yeah. And I often tell that story. One time I was in Spain, in a swimming pool in Spain, and Will and I had done some work together about a month earlier, and Will hadn't told me he was going to Spain, and I was on holiday in Spain, and out of nowhere, in the swimming pool in Spain, there's Will. Like in the whole world, what are the chances?
At the canteen, right?
Yeah. Like, what are the chances? It was mind-blowing.
It happens more often than you'd expect if you're a Kiwi, I would say, for any Kiwis that are listening to this around the world.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get you on because I have had many conversations with you over the last 20 years about instructing in all manner of things, and you are a font of wisdom. And so I thought I'd just get you on and see what currently is on your mind with the way the world is now that will be relevant to group fitness instructors or people that are in the fitness industry.
I think we live in a very interesting time with the fitness industry in regards to group fitness, because it's the first time that technology is a real threat. I think that in the past, the tools weren't there. The capability for people to actually use technology to build an audience wasn't really there. So whereas COVID in some ways has fast forwarded a lot of the ability for everyday people to build an audience. Mm-hmm. But also, like when this has been recorded, Apple have just announced that they're going to do Apple Fitness, which I think is a real game changer for a lot of the big players in the industry. And I think a lot of them will be crapping their pants right now because, they've just got so much money. What they're doing with Apple One is a kind of a subscription model.
Right, that's model. Like news plus health.
Yeah,
plus fitness.
Your music, your health, news, and it's a very cheap price point.
Yep.
And so I think it's just a very interesting moment for group fitness, and what is our for the traditional group fitness instructor, what is our role moving forward? And I also think it's going to be really hard to compete for a lot of, everyday people on the internet. Yep. And so I think I do think there's some solutions, and I do think some things that we need to be thinking about in regards to this, but I just think we live in a fascinating time with fitness. And I do think some of the big players may get swallowed up pretty quickly because the thing with Apple is they've got so much money.
Yeah.
And the big players in our game are big players in our game, but in comparison to like an Apple, it's a game changer.
The way I think about Apple Fitness Plus is that Apple, there's really high barriers to entry because they're only opening it up to people with Apple Watches. So that's already a very small subsection of the population. But there's just so many people that are bought into Apple that it can just swallow up a massive percentage of that Venn diagram where you have people that are into fitness, people that are into tech, and that crossover, Apple's just going to swallow it up. And I'd say that the Pelotons and other companies probably sat within that part of the Venn diagram as well.
Yeah.
But, a whole lot of the world is on Android. And what I've seen with instructors going virtual is that the people that are going to individual instructors, the ones that we work with, are going there for the rapport and the support and the knowing the person one-on-one, which is something that you'd never get from the Apples because they're just not able to facilitate that kind of interaction from trainer to person. They can do it a little bit, but not in depth. But if I was a big kind of fitness aggregator, I would be pretty worried.
Yeah. And I agree. I actually think the solution, because I'm still fundamentally, while I think there's a place for the internet, I still fundamentally believe your ultimate goal in a fitness career should be a leader in your community.
Yep.
And I know nowadays everyone is chasing the online dollar. I think what you're going to find with the online dollar is it's a 1% game. So there will be some people who make a lot of money with the online dollar, but I think there's going to be a lot of people. It's like trying to be a YouTube star. Everyone wants to be a YouTube star. 100 people make money off YouTube, if you get what I mean,
Yeah,
in relative to how many people are trying. And so I think that there's a real, when we think about where are you best to spend your time, to me, I think ultimately a great career in fitness can just be, and ultimately maybe be the best path forward, is just to be an amazing community leader within your region. And there can be online products that sit along top of that. You talked about how, that you can have an online presence, but ultimately you've got to have rapport.
Yep.
And I think you're going to have more rapport, generally speaking, with the people that you can build within your own community, and you can have touch points in the real world. And ultimately then there's just an online product that sits alongside that adds convenience, adds the ability for the people to choose, and all those other things that online can offer. But, to me, I've built a business around community, and we're so successful because of community. And I just think that as a fitness leader, I think ultimately, if we think of the foundations of how you build your career, one of the biggest things all of us need to think about is, what am I doing to nurture community? And when we think about community, one thing I've had this something I've thought about for a long time. So in Christchurch, we had the earthquakes in 2011.
Yeah.
And the earthquakes was a really fascinating moment, because in the earthquakes, the gyms that I worked at, the Les Mills in Christchurch, all got shut down for probably about a 4 or 5 month period. There was this big gap where the gyms were closed. And
right, so it's not that different to COVID in the Northern Hemisphere,
really?
right? Because in New Zealand, you didn't have quite such a big lockdown, but there are places like in the UK, we've just had some more rules. Fortunately, fitness facilities are okay for the time being. But yeah, I hadn't actually put 2 and 2 together on that, but that you experienced that full closure that that a lot of people in the Northern Hemisphere have just gone through.
And it was really interesting. It was probably one of the biggest learning moments of my career, because it was really fascinating, because I was a successful instructor at my gym. I was a big numbers puller. And so when it happened, I created this product called Quake Workouts. And Quake Workouts was outdoor training. It was team training outdoor, pretty standard outdoor training. But it was really successful because it was just the people who had come to my classes. So I was getting like 100 people coming along to do these outdoor workouts. And what was really fascinating was none of them knew each other. So these people would exercise next to each other for years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I went to your class the start of this year, and I recognized a whole lot of faces from 20 years ago.
Yeah. And these people would exercise often 3 times a week, standing next to the same person.
Yeah. And
none of them knew each other. And in the Quake workouts, by the end of it, they'd created friendships.
Yeah.
And it was a really interesting insight for me, because it was like, what we do at Les Mills is a pretty great thing, but there's some really big barriers to creating community. So for example, what are the barriers? Well, first of all, music is awesome, but music doesn't necessarily, in a way that Les Mills creates workouts, allow us to build connections with members between each other. And I suppose I'll take a step back there, because when I think about community, there's a lot of instructors who are great connectors with people. But often, like in Christchurch, we have an instructor called Suli, and he is like the ultimate connector of all time.
Yeah.
And now, the thing with Suli, although he does do a little bit of what I'm talking about, is that people are connected to Suli. Like, I'm a good connector. People are connected to me. But ultimately, when we're trying to build community, what we're trying to do is build relationships between the people who come to our
connect them with
workout.
each other rather than everybody focused on the front.
Yeah. And so like in Group Fit, you got music, which helped, which doesn't help. The connection's ultimately with the person in front of them.
Right.
So there's all these problems with group fitness that actually don't create community. And when the Quake workouts happened, I was like, at the end of it, so many of them come up to me and said, I love this time, because I actually know the people I've been training next to for 10 years of my life. And that really influenced when I've got a running business, and that really influenced how I designed my running business. And one of the biggest things we do with our running business is our job is to build community. So if you look at our running group, if you go on their Facebook page of the individuals in our group, all their friends are now our other runners.
Right.
And that's not me. They haven't fallen in love with me. They've fallen in love with a community. And I think that's the real shift for, and we've built a really successful business around this. And because the thing is, if you're in a community, you want to be there. Yeah. Belonging is ultimately the biggest thing. Now, what a lot of the fitness products do is the belonging is to the workout or the instructor.
Right.
So like a Soul Cycle,
yep.
You feel like the identity to the workout. Equinox, you feel like identity to the kind of the brand that they represent. CrossFit, so it's the workout is the belonging. Now, that's not a bad thing. To have belonging to workouts a really powerful thing. to the instructors, a really powerful thing as well. But to me, if you want to build a really successful career in your local region where you can make a good living from it, you've actually got to build a community where the people are the community. And again, if I look at my running business, we've got a product which is designed for total beginners. Think someone in the 45, quite overweight, hasn't exercised for 20 years. We have a 90% success rate with these people.
When you say success rate, what does that mean? That they continue on to another product or another group?
There's two things. So it's an 8-week product.
Yep.
So our success rate is, do they finish and succeed in the goal?
Got it.
So we're trying to hit with the target market, the hardest market in the market, unfit, overweight, older people who are insecure. And
there's barriers to continuing. And
and we have 90% of them achieve the goal, and most of them stay on with us. Now, there's lots we've done to make them be successful, but the number one thing is you build friendships.
Right.
And a good example of that, last Saturday, so our latest group's 3 weeks into it. And our latest group's into it. And as I was kind of coaching, and one of the ladies, they finished a little bit earlier and I'm still out there coaching. And one of the ladies drove up next to me. She said, "Bevan, I've got an idea. I've got an idea for you." She's been with us for 3 weeks. I said, "What's your idea?" And she goes, "You need to do a movie about the running group, kind of like the Joy Book Club or something like that." Now, it was an ultimate compliment, because what she was saying to me was, I feel belonging to the people in the group. Now, when you feel belonging to people in a group, what are you going to do? You're going to be there, turn up, and you're going to stay with that group. And so I think that the role of the fitness professionals, particularly in this time where we're in such a time of change, is that you need to see yourself as a community builder. And again, if we redefine that, what is community building? It's your job is to build the relationships of the people in your group.
That's really interesting. And I've talked a lot about community, but I've never really actually thought about it and sort of deconstructed it from that perspective, where as an instructor, you really are kind of delivering a class and connecting with all of those individuals. But you're right, it's the connections between the class that really strengthens the bonds and keeps people coming back, which now more than ever is something that people are really struggling with and lacking.
Well, and let's be honest, like I'm not a religious person, and so be it. But one of the things the church does amazingly is community. And if we look at what's happened in the world in the last period of time, is people have become time poor. So even look at sports clubs. Like, we are the biggest running club in New Zealand, and we're a paid product, and we're a premium paid product. Now, why is that? Well, one of the reasons is that all the running clubs, that's done by about 2 or 3 people, have to do everything. So there's a logistical side of it, but people don't have time to give back now. So back in the 80s, when running clubs were huge, you were in a club, but you'd do the run, but also every couple of weekends you'd do marshalling, you'd give back. And so what's happened is we don't have time to give back. So these communities, now I know we can talk about online communities, but people need people. And so 100%. These communities where you actually have, like the church, like sports clubs, they're dying because the people just don't have the time to give the back. You're
totally right. I remember doing like St. Martin's Harriers, and you'd have all the parents and friends and ex-athletes. Or I used to do surf club, and we'd all be down at South Brighton, and everyone would be pitching in on the weekends. And I just can't even fathom that now. And I guess it's interesting because I've obviously moved to London, where it's much more fast paced, but you're saying that, it's happening in Christchurch, which is, in New Zealand, and somewhere that maybe because of my background, I thought was still similar to what it was when I grew up, but it's not.
But it's really not. And I think that's the thing, is that we need to understand. And the thing is, again, we're the biggest running club in New Zealand, and we charge like 100 times more than any other running club. And so when you think about that, the thing people are willing to do is they are willing to pay for community. Because people don't want to give the time. So the kind of deal that we have is, we'll look after everything. You just have to turn up and have the session. So like we've created a really professional product where they give us some money, but we look after all the work, so they don't feel guilt about not giving back. But they can get the value of being community. And I would even argue, in a place like London, people still need people.
I completely agree with you. I think it's a need. It's just, I think it's a need that's even harder to meet because of like the burdens of travel and it's like the time poorness. When you add on like a commute, if you live slightly outside of London, it's just adding that additional kind of hour or half an hour to an hour each end. Okay,
Yeah.
so this is great because I think you've hit the crux of the change that fitness instructors can be in the world, and
Yeah.
and I totally agree with you that it's like in person is absolutely the most fundamentally important pace that can be. And we talk a
Mm.
lot about a lot about online just because right now that's the only option for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But I think
Yeah.
the ideal situation is having online as something that assists what you're doing actually in person. So if we think
Mm.
about community being kind of the thing that you have realized is the most essential thing for your career as an instructor, as a leader in the community, how do you build it? What's the secret sauce that you've created that's allowed you to build that community?
So I think the first is the having that mindset of I am building community.
Hmm.
There's a real
Consciously doing
shift.
it.
Yeah, totally. And because I love the idea of the questions you put in your mind, you'll find great solutions to.
Hmm.
And so once I start to see myself as a community builder, your mind will come up with great innovation and great ways to kind of create that. So I think first of all, the one thing we need to shift is when I walk into a room or as I turn up to the park or wherever my fitness facility
Yep.
is my job is to create community. And
Hmm.
so that will help you, first of all, start to think about the opportunities to create community. So like there's some ways we can do this, like obviously the pre-class experience.
Hmm.
So, in the past, there'd be lots of people waiting around for me. I just walk up and talk to each person.
Yep.
Nowadays, I grab people together, I'll start a
Introduce them to each
conversation,
other. Yeah.
and then I walk away.
Yep.
So just like little bits like that are really important. So I think the first thing you've got to go is um, how do I look at a world in a way that helps me build community?
Hmm.
And so that's the first thing. And that is looking for those conscious moments where you can just create human connection.
Yep.
The hardest thing is the first point of human connection. So at first people feel a bit awkward, and that's why it's
Yeah.
nice for you to be the breakdown, because people stand next to each other and they probably would be quite common and have
Yeah,
similar
yeah.
interests. But the hardest point is to get them to do that. So the first thing is you can be the person who leads that. So I will literally go up to two people and say, just get on the topic, and I'll just pull the next person into the conversation.
Yeah. Because
And
you
then,
know them, you know their name, you know something about them, and you can be the glue.
yeah. And once they're talking, I get out of there. Because then I'm going, okay, where's my next community to build? Where's my next people?
And do you find that tough now? Because I think of all the times that I obviously work for ClassPass and I've been to so many group fitness classes in different places. The number of times I've been somewhere new and I've just been glued to my phone because I'm nervous. Like I'm a self-confident person, but I'm not like I don't just go up.
It's really fascinating because you're self-confident, even you do that.
Yeah, for sure. Like I'll be on my phone, I'll be looking at my phone, I'll be pretending to text someone, and I'll just be wasting time so that I don't have to interact because I'm nervous. How do you do you find that a problem, and what do you do to get over it?
I don't, because I don't have a problem with people. But I get for people who would be shy, that would maybe a bit of a challenge.
I'm meaning if you have people in your class that are like me and they're glued to their phone, do you strike up a conversation?
Because I just approach them. Yeah, I just approach them. Yeah, I fundamentally, I'm a real people person, which helps.
Mm-hmm.
But I think they want to connect.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing, I think that's a really important thing to remember. This is one thing I learned early on, because I'm a really interesting story, because I was a real dropkick, real loser. like I was. Like I left school, no qualifications, druggy, alky, turned my life around. And what's really interesting about my story is I was like the scum of the scum. At 19, I was the scum of the scum. I had a bad drug experience, started to develop myself, found fitness luckily. Within 18 months, I'm being a successful fitness person.
Yep.
Now, what's really interesting about that moment in my life is I got a lot of respect from the world because I was good at the thing that most people suck at.
Yeah.
So when I got into fitness, everyone wanted to listen to what I had to say.
Yep.
Now, the thing is, I actually wasn't that developed as a person. I didn't actually have much to offer. And if you'd looked at me 18 months earlier, no one wanted to listen to me at all. Like I was a total
I knew
dropkick.
you around this time, Bev. You had so much energy and enthusiasm, which you've always had. But yeah, you're probably right. Like when I think of you as the person you are today and you as the person you were when I met you, worlds apart. In terms of development.
And even in that small transition, I was like, again, if you'd met me 18 months earlier, no one, even like my friends, we were the lowest of the low. And even my friends, nobody listened to me. Like I wasn't that, I had no respect. But then I found fitness. And fitness is a funny thing because we are good at the thing that most of the world sucks at.
Mm-hmm.
And so for that reason, we get a disproportionate amount of respect.
When you say good at the thing, you mean like standing up and delivering fitness?
Well, that.
Yep.
But even exercising.
Yeah,
Most
actually,
people don't even exercise.
yeah, you're right. I totally forget because I spend so much time working with fit pros that
Yeah,
there's like the bulk of the people in the
yeah,
world don't do fitness. Period.
yeah, yeah. And not just don't do it, are shit scared of it.
Yeah, yeah,
So
you're right.
we are good at the thing that most people suck at.
Hmm.
And the irony is we don't find it hard.
Yeah.
You know, like for you to do exercise, Will, do you ever go, oh my God, I can't do exercise for a month? You know, like we might have the odd day, and we like to push ourselves, but the idea of just starting exercise isn't hard for us.
No.
So they put their context on us.
Yeah.
So when they see us doing exercise, they think, oh my God, these guys must be working so hard because I find exercise so hard.
Right.
But it's not true. It's
Yeah.
actually an easy, it's like brushing your teeth for us, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Completely.
know? So for that in mind, we get a really huge amount of respect from the public.
Hmm.
Secondly, we also are people who stand in front of people.
Yeah.
And that's another area. What people say, they'd rather die than public speak, which I don't think is true. But, you know, it's so they look up to us and we forget that.
Yeah.
And for me, you know, I remember there was a moment in my late 20s where I realized I'm a Pied Piper.
Yeah.
In my position, and because I'm good at the thing that most people are bad at, I have an ability to influence.
Hmm.
And to me, there's a responsibility that comes with that. And so, like, if I want to build community and I walk in a room and there's someone on their phone who doesn't know, well, I'm the leader.
Right. It's your responsibility to bring them in. And I think
Yeah.
you're totally right. It's that, like, for example, when using the example of myself, if the instructor comes up and starts talking to me, phone goes down. Like I'm looking for an excuse to interact. I'm just too nervous to be the one to do it.
Yeah.
Although when I'm instructing, obviously I'm in the reverse position and I'll go out of my way.
Yeah, totally. And that's the thing is that, like, it's amazing how you can just have such an impact by being that person,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and then you're finding the right approach. Obviously, you've got to have an approachable way, but we're instructors, we get how to do that.
Yeah.
So for me, I think that's first of all, it's your responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
I suppose some other things to think about community, and it is a bit of that kind of how do you build a cult stuff.
Yep.
So identity. So I
Mm-hmm.
use a lot of identity statements, and it is, you know, being a part of this group means that.
Okay.
You know, so like, you know, when I teach a pump class.
Yep.
Now, I teach pump relentlessly hard. Well, because I just think pump's a boring workout if you don't.
Yeah, you're not going to get an argument from me there.
You know what I mean? Like pump's boring. And if you've got a stock standard weight on and just going through the motion, you tick a box, but you're not satisfied.
Yeah.
To me, the glory of pump is 30 seconds ago, you're dying and you push through.
Right.
You know, so when I teach
full
pump,
pain.
yeah, totally. You know, they talk about pump, the instructor needs to bleed. So I never go light, you know, but you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. I remember when you do one of your first pump classes with Jeff and you put about 20 kg on for the chest press. And Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah. You know, but so for me, when I teach pump, and I teach it unapologetically,
mm-hmm.
I teach it, you know, very directive, but I also say, Thursday morning pumpers, you guys love to work hard.
Yeah.
So I'm using identity statements.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the people who get up in the morning at this time, I love that you guys always turn up and always deliver. I love how this person here pushes hard. So what I'm doing is I'm creating a sense of this means to be something in this workout.
Yep, absolutely.
And you know, and so where people know going to Bevan's class means this, but it also means I'm the kind of person. And like, let's be honest, that's what CrossFit does so well.
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
You know, it's that sense of identity around the workout.
So I have a question for you around sort of the way you approach this. One thing that you've always done that has always impressed me is that you're always very thoughtful about the things you say and the like lines that you use in your class. Sometimes they sound throwaway, but you're doing them quite deliberately for a purpose. So do you pre-script the things, or do you think about the identity words that you're going to use before you go in? I guess they just come naturally now, but was there a time when you genuinely put some thought into it in the different contexts?
And to be all honest, I am more of a spontaneous person. But I think the thing I have is I understand the key thought.
Right.
So, you know, I understand I'm trying to give these people the sense of they belong to a workout that's tough.
Yeah.
So then because I know that's there. Like I love teaching the cycle classes.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason I love the cycle classes is because the workout's nothing. So all you're doing is getting inside a head. You know what I
You
mean?
mean the workout's nothing? Is it nothing to think about? You just turning your feet.
The workout's so simple
Yeah.
that it's really a head experience.
Yeah.
And so, so I don't necessarily go into the workout going, today I'm going to talk about this.
Mm-hmm.
I just know at moments, and for me, those things will appear. But it's so maybe when you're newer, you may want to go in with these ideas of the things you want to create. But for me, it's more, here's the thing I want to explore, and in the moment they'll pop up.
And so that's what you do for your pump class. What do you do for your runners? Like for your new sort of the people that you were talking about before, the people who are over 45, a bit overweight, scared of fitness, what identity statements do you use with them?
So I do a lot of rewarding the behavior we love. Mm-hmm. So I do a lot of, I love the way you guys are so supportive of each other.
Yep.
Stuff like that, because what they need is support.
Yep.
So-and-so today, I loved how they were able to manage their intensity.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. So what you're doing is you're praising the behavior that you want to see from the people in the group.
Right. And then they get that reinforced that that's the behavior that belongs here, and that there's an expectation, but also a reward. And that if you're doing that, you're part of the community, you identify with everybody else.
That's a really interesting question. What is culture? And to me, I think culture, there's lots of definitions, but one, the way I look at culture is when I step in that environment, there's behaviors I do.
Yep, for sure.
Because let's be honest, there's versions of us that are crap versions because of the environment we're going to.
Yeah.
You might be that when you go out on the piss with your mates, you actually don't like that version of yourself that much. Mm-hmm. And then there's cultures where you walk into and there's just a higher version of yourself.
Yeah, 100%.
And so, what I think about is in building my cultures, first of all, what does each culture represent? Mm-hmm. And then when people walk into this world, we don't tell them the culture,
right?
But the behaviors of the culture and the people in the environment kind of just pick up on it, and they become that version of themselves. And that's what I love. Oh, you go.
No. Keep talking.
Well, no, because that's what I love, because we're creating worlds.
Mm.
And ultimately what we're trying to do is create worlds where people are successful. And so, that's where you kind of take that step back and look at your world and go, what are we doing to actually create these cultures that are actually going to bring the best out in people? Like in our running group, it's actually not a competitive running group. Now, this is not to say people don't want to beat people, but ultimately our running group is you get better by helping other people get better.
Yep.
And actually, I'll use an example of you in my career, because you're a really good person in my career. Because
okay.
Well, no, you are, because there's, so when I started in body attack videos, it was back in the days where with Les Mills, I don't know if obviously this is a more global audience, but Les Mills have these videos, they're pretty big, and getting on one's a big thing. And when I first started on it, it was at a time where they just used the same people all the time. Mm-hmm. And so for my first period, it was just me and two other people. And you kind of just thought, next 20 years, it's going to be me and two other people.
Yeah. And
then the game changed, and I started using lots of different people, and it was the right thing to do. But it was definitely an insecure moment for me, because I was like, well, where am I in this?
Yeah. You'd reached that point, and then suddenly it didn't look like it was quite so.
Yeah, totally. But to be honest, being a cocky little shit that I was, I kind of still felt I was the best. Yeah. I still felt that, I'm the best instructor there is. And then you came onto the DVD, and the first DVD you did, I was like, oh, wow, there's another level.
Oh, Bev, thanks.
No, seriously, you were brilliant. And the insecure side of me wanted to push you down.
You never did.
I didn't, but I was aware of it. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to pick on some of the things that maybe you weren't so strong in, or just insecure thoughts saying insecure things. Yeah. Now I caught it, and my approach was, okay, well, I can try bring Will down because I'm threatened.
Yep.
Or I can use him to show me another level.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately that's what I did. I was like, okay, Will's lifted the game, I need to lift the game myself. And in my running group, that's what we are. You don't need to shit on other people, because we're always trying to get everyone higher. And I'll be honest, like in the last moment, there's a guy called Dan who's doing body tech, and his last DVD I think is the best ever. I think the way he presented in the last DVD is the best attack instructing I've ever seen. I think it's surpassed anything I've ever done. Now, do I get another opportunity moving forward? Maybe. Will I get that level? I'll be aiming for it. Yep. So things like that around culture, Is
Yeah,
what,
yeah,
so what's the culture you're creating for your world that people will just subconsciously pick up on and become?
right. And it has to start with you, right? Because I think that as an instructor, as a person that puts yourself in front of other people and has to give a lot of your, there has to be some ego there to create this persona that you're delivering to other people. The downside of that is that you can be quite insecure when you see someone that's better than you or doing it
Yeah,
better. And that, like,
yeah,
you're absolutely right. There's like that internal saboteur that can kind of start to pick at the things that
yeah,
about other people that you're maybe a little bit jealous of and start to tear them
yeah.
down. And that has a terrible effect on community, because you can't build community unless you're lifting everybody up.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
But
And
it's
so,
easy
and
to
then
fall into, really easy.
well, it's insecurity, and we all have
Yeah.
insecurities, and especially like in the world that we were in, or that I was in, you were in, there's limited opportunity.
Mm.
And so, it is a real threat when someone comes along as a star, because it really quite often means you're gone. Like it does. There's a lot of people who have been the stars in our world, and this isn't just Les Mills, it's the fitness world.
Yeah, for sure.
So then how do you deal with that? And ultimately, I think you go back to, well, I'm here to help people.
Yeah, that's really interesting, actually. I'm really glad that you brought up kind of this line of conversation, because you've been with Les Mills for like over 20 years. You've done everything, traveled all around the world, trained people all around the world, been on, I don't know, hundreds, but tens of DVDs.
Yeah.
You've kind of done it all, right? You've achieved
Yeah.
the absolute maximum of what you can achieve in that sphere, and you've moved into something else that is obviously like fulfilling and making you happy. When did you kind of realize that there was life outside of the specific fitness thing that you were doing?
I think one thing that's really important, especially if you want to have a lifetime career in fitness, I think there's a few things. First of all, you've got to learn business.
Yep.
And so when did it happen for me? 2 times it happened for me. Early on in my career, I got asked to go to Japan. And it was kind of the first big trip I do for Les Mills. I was really excited. And then the manager at Christchurch Gym said, no, I couldn't, because I was too important to the Christchurch Gym. And that really was like, wow, like, here's this opportunity, I'm being limited.
Yeah.
And then secondly, I went to the States in about 2003 and spent like 3 or 4 months there. And everybody above me was unhappy.
Right.
And it was like, oh, wow. Okay. So you need to build another life.
Yeah.
Because, if the people above me are unhappy, is this the life I want? And so for me, it was very much, and I've been very lucky because I still am in Les Mills. I still love Les Mills, and I still try to do great work in Les Mills, but it's just a part of my life now. Whereas at that moment in my life, it was all my life.
Everything. Yeah.
And so I do think it's important for, especially, and let's be honest, that part of the fitness world is a young man's game, or young person's game. I'm 43. I might have a couple more DVDs in me, but 10 years from now, I'm not doing body attack DVDs.
Yeah.
And so if you don't create another path, you will not survive in that world, at least.
Yeah.
And the other thing I think about as a fitness career is 2 things. I want a fitness career where I'm not desperately trying to hold on to a fitness career.
Yeah. So true, right? Yeah, where that's not based upon something that is slowly falling from your grasp as you age. Because the reality is, like, we've been in this game a long time. I can't jump the way I used to do. I can't do any of that stuff. I can do other stuff much better than I used to, but there's certain things that are just harder as you get older.
Yeah. And so ultimately, and this is probably more for people who are on the younger side of the things. And also, so I want a career that, that I'm not desperately holding on to, but also I just want to think about how to help people.
Yeah.
So if I'm feeling desperate about holding on to my career, I can't put my mind space into how to help people.
Yeah.
And so, it's that, like, I want to give myself as much opportunity within a week to spend time problem solving, evolution of helping other people. And so I think there's a few things if we think about a career. And I think first of all, you got to get into that first stage and just actually make your career.
Yep.
I think it is worth building a strong brand within your own name. It's something I've kind of done well. Your name means something in your community. Like in Christchurch, when people talk about fitness, mine's one of the names that's going to come up.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like if people talk about fitness, they'll probably talk about Bevan. Now, I'm not the only name, and there's other great fitness professionals in Christchurch, but in my community, my name's going to come up. So it's got a good reputation. I think ultimately you've got to learn business, because the fitness industry is a passion game, and passion games are really interesting because passion games, it's a 1% market.
Yeah.
So in passion games, 1% of the people make the money, and everyone else is hoping to make the dream.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so really what you've got to do is you've got to have some kind of business sense. And because, you know, when I had that moment around 2003, about couple of years later, I started my running business.
Yep.
Now I've got a running business that's a good business, provides a great lifestyle. I also invested wisely when I was younger as well. So now at 40, where a lot of people my age in the industry are shitting themselves and trying to look for careers elsewhere. And, you know, I can stay in fitness forever, you know, so learning a business, and you don't have to be bloody Bill Gates, but you know, I know with your product's a really great product because people can actually build a little business around what they're doing and learning,
absolutely.
you know, your basic customer service, learning some marketing, learning, you know, all those things, asking for what you're worth.
Yep.
You know, like my running product is a premium product. We're not cheap, but we're a great product. And, you know, and if we want to help more people, I need money for marketing to spend more money on, you know. And
that's a really, really interesting thing that kind of brings us back to the top of the discussion, right? Because you've got Apple that are about to release Apple Fitness Plus for $9.95 for a monthly subscription, right? US. So who knows what it'll be around the world, but that's the price point in US dollars. And if you're an instructor who's, you know, delivering classes either in person, online or whatever, that's not enough to sustain you. Like you have to charge more than that. And so there are ways for you to justify that, which is all the other stuff you talked about, right? It's the creating community, creating a place for people to go, and creating that value that a large organization that is doing it for the numbers and volume just can't do.
Yeah. And also don't be afraid to be a premium product.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I do like being niche, you know, like we just do running.
Yeah.
We don't try to do anything else. I do like trying to be niche to a specific market. But, you know, be a premium product, you know. Now, then you might go, but I want to help people who can't afford a premium product. And I have to admit, that's kind of the next stage of my career.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to kind of create products that have a focus on low decile. And I kind of think there might be a Robin Hood model there where I can make money off people who can afford a premium product.
Yeah, and use that to fund the stuff you do.
Yeah, totally. So I get that people might say, but I want to help everyday people, and that's cool as well. But I do just think that if you want to be like in our age, and you're doing the same, you know, you've created a business, you know, it's kept you in fitness.
Yep. For sure.
And probably the other thing that I love about creating your own business is I love Les Mills. I'm a passionate Les Mills person, and I wanted to see them be continued for the long term. But I don't agree with everything in their philosophy. And when I remember a friend of mine, I had a really good friend when I was doing triathlon, and he said to me, Bev, if you want to change the world, create business. Now, you can argue against that, but his point was, if you create a successful business, you spread your philosophy.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, and I'm sure you feel that with what you're doing with Shift.
Yeah, and there's something that's really, and it doesn't need to be a certain size or anything, but there's something so fulfilling about just having a goal, and not a goal that's sort of money oriented or success oriented, but so my goal with Shift is I have worked for a lot of other fitness companies, and I wanted to give instructors something that was high quality but low cost, because I knew that instructor pay was shit. And so can I create something that can facilitate instructors to create their own businesses, exactly like you just said? And so like knowing that that's the thing that I'm doing propels me when it gets hard, and when it was—
you've got a mission, eh?
Yeah, it was slow to take off at the start, and it took people a while to understand what Shift was. I had an app before other people had apps, and people didn't quite get it. But, you know, I persevered because I cared about what I was doing and the outcomes that I was hoping to create.
And I know you and I have had conversations where you've struggled with some of the ethics of other businesses you've worked for. And that's what's great when you create your own thing, is that here's the thing I believe in. And if I can create a good business around that, then I can reach more of the world with that. Because that's the thing, is like, we are a premium product with our running business, but because of that, I can afford to pay for $100 to someone to join my group, because I have the money to do that. And, you know, and I know that once they join, my return's going to be good. So I just think that fundamentally, to start to learn some business, start to think of your experience as a business, but also to ask your value. And if you've got a good product that delivers high service, then your value, people will pay for it.
How much of your time do you spend on, what's the proportion of time you spend delivering classes versus building your business and creating community and doing that sort of stuff? What's the mix that you spend in your business?
So I teach 8 classes a week, and I probably take 4 running sessions a week. And then I probably spend about 10 hours a week on my business. But we've got my wife works full time on my business, and we've got a couple of staff, and we have 20 something coaches working for us. So it's not
Wow.
like
And you're
I'm
running
just,
business.
yeah, totally. Yeah. So, and that's probably another thing is, the argument is ultimately you make more money when you have more people working for you.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can create a product or a market, and then you can bring other people on and develop a training system and so on, that's when you can really start to, make more money. And to be honest, I'm lucky because my wife and I invested very young. So financially, we were in a very good position at this stage in our life.
Mm-hmm.
And so our business does make money, and we take a drawing from it. But at this point, it's more how can we use it to reach more people?
Yeah.
So like,
Yeah.
I'll be honest, my wife and I are talking right now, and this is big picture thinking, is how do we create a master chef for fitness? And then how do we create a business structure around that can actually help more people in New Zealand move? Now that's a real big picture thing,
Yeah.
and we're going to have to throw a lot of money at that, and it'll take a lot of time and resource, and it may not even work. But because we've got a business that can bring some money, we can start to put some money aside to kind of think of that big picture stuff.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So many, I feel like I could ask you things about fitness forever, but if you were a fitness instructor who, let's say you didn't quite make the wise decisions that you made sort of 20 years ago, if you were someone that was finding themselves sort of struggling at the moment, what would be the first thing you would do to kind of zone in on what's important and what you should be doing to kind of further your career?
So I think a couple of things is often the older instructors drop their standards.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one thing I'm really proud of in my career. I'm still current. Like in Les Mills, I still only teach the latest 10 releases.
Mm-hmm.
Like once every 3 months, I'll do an old tour class. I still maintain my fitness. So I've never dropped my standard. If anything, like early on in my career, and you know this, I never knew the choreo, but I was cheeky and I could get away with it. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
there
Yeah.
was kind of, at my gym, there was a set of rules for Bevan, and there was a set of rules for everyone
Totally.
else.
That's absolutely.
And I got away with murder because I kind of had this thing that I did really well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you watch my class now, I'm the highest quality version of myself I've ever been as an instructor.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for a couple of reasons. A, you've got to deliver.
Mm-hmm.
People turn up, you've got to respect your customer.
Yep.
And I think that's really important. B, for your own satisfaction. Because if you're turning up and just doing the same tricks you've done for the last 10 years,
yep,
you're not growing anymore.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think that it's a trap that a lot of people, and I like this applies to fitness instructors, but it applies across the board, right? Anyone that's been in a career for a long time and they've kind of stopped trying, undoubtedly they've also stopped receiving joy from it, because there's an element of joy that only comes from working and attaining and achieving. And if you're just coasting, then it's just going to decrease and decrease over time, right?
Yeah. And so I suppose, like it was interesting on Monday night, I write a journal every night, I'm pretty full on, but, and in my journal, I think I taught, last Monday night, I wrote down, I think I taught one of my greatest classes of all time.
Really?
Yeah. It was just one of those, everything clicked.
Yeah, you got the flow.
It was just couldn't have done better. Now that's partly because I'm an experienced instructor who's done it forever and I know the tricks and I know but I did my prep before the class, I did the work to give myself the opportunity. And I think it's really important that A, know your standards. What are your standards? And you might need to go back to what was important to you when you're early on in your career.
Yeah.
B, maintain them and grow them. So that's the one thing I am really proud of. I am still current. I am still in touch with what the programs are right now. I still, I've never really cared that much about fashion, but I'm still fashionable, I remember when I started instructing, there was a guy at the gym who used to be the top instructor who still dressed like he was in the 80s. And the older instructors get into this habit because we don't want to spend money on clothes because, I do a good job, but it's, this
is all great stuff because it's really sort of refreshing to hear from someone who, you've done everything. You've basically achieved everything you want to achieve in group fitness. Yeah. You're still doing other stuff in fitness, but you still maintain that drive to still be the best version of you when you stand up.
Yeah. And that's because if the day I lose that, it's the day I quit.
Right.
Like it is, because if I'm not chasing that, then I'm regressing in life.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm a big person who life's about the evolution of self. So, and the thing is, I still love the crap out of group fitness. Like, again, like Monday night was one of the best classes I've ever done. Like, how cool is that? Like, I love teaching classes and I want a long career. So that stuff, I do think you've just got to get better at body management as you get older. But also, so for me, if you'd asked me 10 years ago why I'll have to pull back, it was because my greatest strengths are people. I'm a bit of a comedian. And my classes, I am good at fun when I teach. Yeah. And I'm hard. Yeah. So if you do my workout, intense. You're going to kick your ass. I remember one of the greatest compliments I got was someone said, when you walk in the room, you're dealing with an athlete. Yeah. And that's quite a nice compliment. Yeah. So if you'd asked me 10 years ago, why do you think your career will stop? Is because I won't have the hard thing anymore. Right, you can't hit that top end. You can't hit the top end in the same way that you used to. And you'll now, I think if you put a video of me teaching 10 years ago to now, I'm not hitting the same top end. Yeah. But I still go to that place. Yeah. You know what I mean? And so just it's kind of standard things. But I've got to look after my body a bit more to be able to do that now. Yeah. And so I think as you age, I think first you've got to look after your body more. And probably one thing I think is really important, which is hard, is you can never stop. Yeah, totally. I've never had 3 months off. Because I think that what happens is when we have the break, we're all hardcore. We know how to push ourselves. We come back too hard, we get injured, and we get in this injury loop forever. Yeah, you're right. You're right. So as you age, you've got to be consistent. Yeah. So there's probably other things, but there's some things to think about. So I think that is probably a good place for us to end. Thank you, Bevan, so much for passing on some of your wisdom. Hopefully I'll have you back soon and we can talk about all the great things you're doing with your big picture stuff in the running scene and the fitness scene. Actually, you'll hear from me soon because I'm writing a new book. Okay. And I'm really excited about it because it's really fun. How many books have you written? Only one. Only one? But I've written a book that the whole idea is you take someone from doing nothing to loving exercise in a year, not just achieving a fitness goal, actually loving exercise. And it takes all the lessons I've learned and it's kind of this journey through a year. So I'll be coming to promote it on here. But if I can just say one more thing. Yeah, you can say as many things as you want. Well, just for those listening, do see yourself as a Pied Piper. Yeah. Do see the influence that you have on the world and then take responsibility with that, but then just think of how you can flourish that. Because that's what's cool about, if we go back to that thing of we have respect, once you understand that and you see that we're Pied Pipers, what a cool opportunity that is in a life. And so don't get to the end of your career and go, oh, should I miss that opportunity? It's like, to me, that we make people's lives better. Yeah. We help people discover, the greatest compliment we get, or I get, is when someone says, I'm better at home, I'm better at work, I'm just a better version of me because of this fitness thing we've added. We're so lucky. So just make sure you embrace and enhance that in your own life. And it's easy to get caught up in how hard it can be, keeping fresh and keeping fashionable and keeping fit and dealing with low pay and running a business and all that sort of stuff. But if you can, focus in on all the benefits that come around the sides from helping other people, then that's really the way forward. And it's the greatest reward, isn't it? Yeah, for sure. For you, when someone's come and said, oh, shift's actually meant I'll be able to make an income, I'm having an impact. And, how cool is that for you? Yeah, it's fantastic. It's exactly what I want. And especially as I've gotten older and more mature and the ego side of things is ebbed away and I've focused more on other people, it's the really impactful thing that makes me happy about what I'm doing. Yeah. I love the idea of at the end of this, what's your legacy? And I think it's an age question that comes up as you get older, you start to think about that. And so, and that's something that can be a conscious choice. Yep. Yeah. So, but you actually have to choose it. Yeah. It's not just going to happen. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Bevan. I look forward to chatting to you again when you release the book. Thanks for having me on, mate. Cheers.